The kettle began its soft whisper just as the afternoon light turned honey gold against the curtains. It was that quiet hour when the day seemed to pause and listen to itself, the hour she always chose for tea. May rinsed the teapot with a careful swirl of hot water, warming the ceramic the way her grandmother had taught her. The steam rose in gentle curls, fogging her glasses for a moment. She smiled and wiped them on the edge of her apron, already dusted with flour from the morning's baking. Outside, the garden fence creaked in the breeze, and somewhere beyond it a bicycle bell chimed faintly along the distant road. On the small wooden table by the window, a plate of butter cookies cooled on a linen cloth. She had shaped them with the tines of a fork, leaving tiny ridges that held the golden glaze. The kitchen still smelled of vanilla and toasted sugar, warm and round, like a hug that lingered in the air. She chose 3 cookies, the most even ones, and placed them on her favorite saucer with blue painted flowers that had faded at the edges. The kettle clicked off. She poured the water over the tea leaves and listened to the quiet bloom of sound as they unfurled. It was a sound she loved, soft, leafy, almost like a sigh. She carried the tray into the sitting room, where the afternoon sun pooled on the tatami mat in a bright square. The room was tidy in the gentle way of a lived-in home. A basket of mending sat by the low shelf, threads in soft colors spilling like a quiet rainbow. Her knitting needles rested across a half-finished scarf, the yarn a dusky lavender that reminded her of twilight clouds. On the windowsill, a small jar held sprigs of mint she had cut that morning, their scent fresh and green. May set the tray down and adjusted the cushion opposite her own, patting it lightly to smooth the fabric. She did it every day without thinking, an old habit, like setting an extra pair of chopsticks at dinner. The chair remained empty, of course, but the gesture felt right, like leaving a window open for a breeze that might someday return. The clock on the wall ticked with patient wooden clicks. She poured the tea, watching the amber color deepen in the cup. A thin ribbon of steam brushed her cheek. She took a careful sip and let the warmth settle into her chest. By the front door, the small metal mail slot gleamed in the light. She could see it from where she sat. Most days, the post arrived in the late morning, the soft clatter of envelopes slipping through enough to make her look up from whatever she was doing, washing vegetables, hanging laundry, trimming the tomato vines in the yard. Today, like many days, there had been nothing. She reached for a cookie and broke it in half. The crumb was tender, still faintly warm at the center. As she ate, she picked up the scarf and worked a few rows, the needles clicking in a slow, steady rhythm. Knit, purl, knit, purl. The yarn slipped through her fingers with a soft whisper. Outside, a cloud drifted across the sun, and the room dimmed to a gentler shade. She could hear Mrs. Tanaka next door shaking out a rug, the thump, thump, thump like a distant drum. A dog barked once, then twice, then gave up and lay back down, judging by the silence that followed. May paused her knitting and glanced at the small wooden shelf by the wall. On it sat a stack of letters tied with a ribbon the color of faded cherries. The paper edges had softened over the years, corners rounded from rereading. She didn't need to open them to know the looping handwriting inside, the way certain words leaned forward, as if hurrying to be spoken. She remembered the last letter clearly. The promise at the end had been simple: "I'll write again once I'm settled." She had folded that page more carefully than the others, as though neatness might help the future arrive sooner. A breeze nudged the curtains, bringing in the scent of the garden, damp soil, green leaves, and the faint sweetness of the jasmine vine climbing the fence. May set her knitting down and went to the back door, slipping on her sandals. The garden path was warm underfoot. She knelt beside the herb patch and pinched off a few more mint leaves, rubbing one between her fingers and breathing in deeply. A ladybug crawled along the edge of a leaf, its red shell bright against the green. She watched it for a moment, smiling, before returning inside. Back in the kitchen, she rinsed the mint and added it to a small dish of sugar, crushing them together with a spoon. The scent bloomed instantly, cool and sweet. She spooned a little into her teacup and stirred, listening to the faint clink of porcelain. The front gate creaked. Her heart lifted the way it always did, light and quick, like a bird startled into flight. She held her breath, waiting for the footstep on the path, the soft slide of paper through the slot. But it was only the wind. The gate sighed again and settled. She stood very still for a moment, then let the breath go slowly through her nose. The disappointment was familiar, worn smooth like a pebble in a pocket. It no longer hurt sharply, it simply existed, a small, quiet weight she carried alongside everything else. May returned to the sitting room and picked up her journal from the shelf. The cover was cloth, patterned with tiny leaves. She opened to a fresh page and wrote the date in careful strokes. Then she described the day, the way the morning glory had opened 2 new blooms, the smell of the cookies, the shape of the cloud that had looked like a sleeping cat. At the end, as she often did, she wrote a few lines addressed to someone far away. Nothing grand, just small things. The tomatoes are almost ripe. I fixed the loose board on the porch. I hope you are warm where you are. She closed the journal and rested her hand on it for a moment, feeling the faint texture of the fabric beneath her palm. The light shifted again, turning softer, more golden. Dust motes drifted in the beam near the window, rising and falling like tiny, lazy dancers. May finished her tea, now lukewarm, and nibbled the last piece of cookie. In the quiet, she could almost imagine another cup being lifted, another voice commenting on the mint, the cookies, the way the afternoon had settled so gently around the house. The feeling didn't make her sad. It felt like sitting beside a memory that had decided to keep her company. The clock ticked on. Somewhere, a child laughed in the distance. May picked up her knitting once more, the lavender yarn pooling softly in her lap, and continued her slow, steady rows as the day drifted toward evening, leaving the door and her heart peacefully, patiently open.